Hello, everyone. My name is Maayan, and welcome to Maayan Talks MLS. This is something I've wanted to do for a while now, and I guess I'll start by just introducing myself a little bit. My name is Maayan. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I've been extremely passionate about MLS for the past few years and passionate about the Whitecaps since 2016 when I moved to Vancouver. Um, and yeah, I wanted to just start up a channel where I can really just share my thoughts on all things around the league. Today I'm just going to start pretty simple by doing a preview of Matchday 37, which is coming up tomorrow at the time of recording and hopefully at the time of uploading as well, but I guess we'll see how that goes for me. Yeah, I'm just going to go briefly through every game. We'll see. Some games I'm going to have more of a say on than others just because of the significance. Like, there's some games where there's genuinely zero implication for the rest of the season, so I'm kind of just going to skip over them. Sorry, Atlanta, New England, that sort of crowd. But I mean, you kind of did it to yourself. And yeah, let's get straight into it. All right. So first game of the weekend, we've got Toronto FC hosting Inter Miami. Now, I didn't actually notice this until earlier today, but I believe Toronto have drawn their last 5 games, and 4 of them have been 1-1 draws. So maybe that's a sign of things to come for tomorrow. And I mean, as a Whitecaps fan, I certainly hope so, just in terms of the supporter shield race. I'd love to see Miami drop some points, but I mean, at this point, I highly doubt it. Miami are front runners for the Shield now. At this point, if they win out, they do win it because of the Caps dropping points on Wednesday. And I mean, with the way Lionel Messi's playing, assuming he plays every game from now until the end of the regular season, I think they will win the Shield. Um, I mean, I could see them drop points against Chicago, maybe. But other than that, they've got a fairly easy schedule coming up. And this Toronto game is certainly one of the easy games. I mean, Toronto, don't get me wrong, they do look a lot more promising going into next season than they did to start this season. I mean, they brought in Georgi Mihailovic, which is a fantastic addition. They brought in Jose Cifuentes, who's a well-proven MLS player. They've got some young pieces. I think they're still like Bryn Hilton hasn't really been great, so I do think they still need a proper striker to replace there. But yeah, Toronto have some questions they need to answer in the offseason. This game doesn't mean much for them because they're out of the playoff race. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. The players are obviously going to want to try and win, especially because it's an Inter Miami game. I feel like it's kind of always that sort of thing with a team whenever they play Miami. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that Miami should win, especially if Lionel Messi. I'm assuming he's playing. I haven't seen anything saying that he wouldn't. So yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes. But realistically, I see an Inter Miami win here and just push them further towards the Supporters' Shield win. Now, next up, we've got Charlotte hosting CF Montreal. A somewhat similar situation in the sense that Montreal have nothing to play for as well, and Charlotte are not necessarily pushing for the Shield anymore because of the loss to NYCFC, but still fighting for a home playoff game. Obviously, a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, which is still extremely tight. I mean, between them in, I guess, fourth now, because Miami have passed them, between them in fourth and Columbus in eighth, there's 3 points. So and every result matters in this case, and Charlotte have to take advantage of this game against Montreal. Obviously, the NYCFC game didn't go as planned, conceded 2 penalties to Alonso Martinez. Wilfried Zaha had his penalty saved by Matt Freese. But Charlotte will look to bounce back, and obviously Montreal is the kind of team you want to do it against because don't get me wrong, Montreal also have quite a few promising young talents. You got like Dante Sealy, who's been great this season. Older Escobar, if he gets more game time next season, he's going to be phenomenal. But they don't really have an identity under Marco Donadel, and like it's also not a good sign that their ownership has publicly announced that they're undergoing a rebuild. So we'll see what comes from that. But yeah, I mean, I guess really the main concern for Charlotte in this game is that Pep Biel left the NYCFC game injured, and I'm not sure if he's going to be available or not. And it's apparently a different injury to what kept him out for a long time during the summer. So I guess we'll see what comes of that. But Charlotte have proven a lot of things during that win streak, that record-setting win streak, record-tying, I guess. But yeah, we'll see how this game goes. Should be an interesting one. I think Charlotte obviously are looking to bounce back, and I think they'll be able to. It's a pretty favorable matchup for them overall, and we'll see what comes of it. And then next up, we've got another kind of similar game in the sense that it's DC United, one of the worst teams in the league, hosting the Philadelphia Union. And I'll start with DC. DC are they're an absolute mess right now. Like, I've got zero confidence in this team doing anything noteworthy, at least positive wise. I genuinely don't have any confidence in them. I'm just gonna say hiring a CSO with zero previous experience of working for a club is usually not a great sign. And I'll stick with that, and I'll move on because I don't want to talk about DC United anymore. Now, Philadelphia, obviously, the past week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, was pretty rough for them. The 7-0 loss in Vancouver, and then losing 3-1 in the US Open Cup semifinal to Nashville. But they bounced back, beat New England 1-0, and obviously New England is a team you should beat. So maybe it would have been a different result if they had played a team that was in the playoff race or hadn't just sacked their manager, but obviously that wasn't the case. They played against New England and did what they were supposed to do. They bounced back, they won, and I will say that DC did put up a challenge against Inter Miami when they played Inter Miami very recently, obviously a 3-2 game in that. But Philadelphia's backline, although obviously conceded 7 against Vancouver, pretty rotated team, but regardless, pretty solid backline anyways. Even with that game, putting that aside, including that game, whatever, Philly have a much stronger backline than Inter Miami do. I'm much more confident in them being able to keep a clean sheet or, concede fewer goals than Miami did with the 2 they conceded to DC. And I think they've got enough quality in their attack that even with, the tough stretch they went through, I think they should pretty comfortably score 2 or 3 goals against this DC United team, even though it's away from home. Doesn't really make a difference if it's home or away for DC. Now we move on to our next game of the day, which is a fascinating one. We've got New England Revolution against Atlanta United. That was sarcasm there. I do not have anything to say about this game, really. I think Carlos Gil will probably score, but these teams don't have anything to play for, either of these teams. Yeah, I think Carlos Gil scores. Atlanta looked fun against San Diego, but fun doesn't mean much when you don't get results, especially when you're no longer in contention for the playoffs. So yeah, we're going to move swiftly on from that one and on to a much bigger game, which is the Hudson River Derby. New York Red Bulls hosting NYCFC, and it's a massive game for both of these teams. The Red Bulls pretty much have to win this game if they want to remain in contention for the playoffs. They're pretty close to Chicago, but Chicago have a game in hand, so it's looking pretty tough for them right now. The good thing for them is that Alonso Martinez is ruled out for this game with an injury, so it's going to be much more difficult for NYCFC, especially playing without a proper number 9, as we saw against Miami midweek. NYCFC found it really difficult to play through the middle without the presence of Martinez, that true number 9. It was kind of, a rotation between a couple different players in terms of actually playing up front there, but still, I think NYCFC had so much quality in their team. They've got, obviously, Hannes Wolf is great. Nicolas Fernandez, the new guy, is fantastic. I think they've got so much quality in the back. Matt Fries is one of the best goalkeepers in MLS, so I think this is really going to be a fascinating game. NYCFC still looking to secure a home playoff game, while also trying to make sure they don't end up in the wildcard game because of how tight this Eastern Conference is. Obviously, that Montreal win for the Red Bulls was very, very big, especially away from home, because they've been dreadful away from home this season. So it's a good bit of momentum going into this game. And on the other hand, NYCFC coming off of a 4-0 loss to Inter Miami. Obviously not the greatest thing in the world for them, but we'll see what happens. I could see this game go either way. I think it might be a very high-scoring game, even though NYCFC overall have a very relatively good backline. I think this game could be very high scoring, and I guess we'll see what happens there. And we move on to a game between the 8 and 9 seed right now, which is Columbus as the 8 seed playing away against Chicago in the 9 seed. And this is a massive game. Chicago are looking to separate themselves from the Red Bulls in order to assert themselves at the 9 slot, maybe even go ahead of the Crew if they win this game. They've got obviously their dynamic attack really of Jonathan Bamba, Hugo Kuipers, and then Phillips Incarnago, the all-star. They'll look to thrive against this kind of makeshift Crew backline with all the injuries they've had. The likes of Sean Zawadzki's out, Mo Farsi's been out for a while, Rudy Camacho hasn't played this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how Columbus line up. And after, there was that whole game with Atlanta conceding 4 in the second half, we'll see what Columbus do and what Wilfred Nancy does. And Columbus, still in contention for a home playoff game, which is crazy to think that the 8 seed, 4 games left in the season, is in that position. But they're 3 points back of Charlotte at number 4, so it really is anybody's game right now. But they are missing both Diego Rossi and Wissam Abu Ali for the rest of the season. It's going to be extremely tough for them. Someone needs to step up. Genuinely, anyone in the attack. Obviously they brought in Daniel Gazdag mid-season to I guess it was kind of as a Cucho replacement, to at least be a guy that they know can score. And he hasn't really done that. He scored maybe 1 goal or 2 from open play, and he scored a penalty or 2 as well. But he just hasn't been enough. He hasn't done anything noteworthy really for this team. He's had solid games, solid moments, but just not enough, and he needs to step up now without these 2 key pieces that are out for the rest of the regular season and maybe the playoffs as well, assuming Columbus don't somehow drop out of that, which I think would be very unlikely, but we've seen crazier things happen. So yeah, this is a massive game for both teams. I think this game, honestly, I think Chicago win it. I think with the way the Crew look right now, all their injuries, everything, they just drew against Toronto, which is not very good as it is, even though Toronto, like I said, are looking more promising going into next season. But regardless, it's not a great result. And with the amount of injuries that you've sustained and all that, it's going to be tough for Columbus. It really is. But moving swiftly on to the next game, we've got Nashville against Houston. Also a big game for both of these teams. Nashville could be in an extremely different position right now if they hadn't had such a poor run of form in MLS, with just 1 win in their last 7 games. And I believe that 1 win is the 5-1 win over Orlando at the end of August when Orlando were rotating because of the Leagues Cup. But yeah, Nashville 1 win in the last 7 games, but they do have Hani Mukhtar and Sam Sarge, and they're playing at home. Those 2 alone should be able to and have been winning games on a relatively consistent level. Obviously, Nashville also beat Philadelphia recently, 3-1 to advance to the US Open Cup final. So we'll see. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a boost for them. They did just lose to Orlando in devastating fashion in added time with a Duncan McGuire goal. But regardless, I think this Nashville team is still very good. They've been on a poor run of form, but regardless, you've got Hani Mukhtar, you've got Sam Sarge, you've got good pieces around them. You should be able to win games. And Houston, they're just 1 point out of the wildcard spot in the Western Conference right now, and they need this win badly. I think, although it's going to be very difficult playing in Nashville against a team of such high quality, I think what they do have going for them is that Ezequiel Ponce has been in better form as of late. He scored 3 goals in his last 4 games, and Houston need that. They need the same Ezequiel Ponce to show up, and they need Jack McLean to do what he's been doing throughout most of this season, and especially lately, or not especially lately, but just in general, this season with the U.S. men's national team as well. Create everything, have a hit from long range if he needs to. He's pretty similar to Vander in that he can just create anything with the ball at his feet. I think they need that from him. They need that creativity from him very badly in this game. Now we're going to move on to a game where, I mean, one team has a lot to play for, the other not so much. And that team that doesn't have much to play for, which I'm not really going to talk about, is St. Louis. Now, what I will say about St. Louis is that Brendan McSorley scored a brace in his first ever start for the team in their last game, which was a win. So obviously, fair play to them, fair play to him. Marcel Hartel also scored a beautiful goal in that game, but St. Louis have nothing to play for, really. Like, I think they're technically not yet eliminated from playoff contention, but they'd have to win all their games and make sure that everyone above them loses, which I find extremely unlikely, especially because this game is against LAFC. Now, LAFC do still have a lot to play for. They've yet to guarantee a top four spot in the West, although they're in a pretty good position to do so. They're 7 points behind San Diego, who are in first in the West and have 2 games in hand. So I think there's a fairly realistic world in which this team ends up at the top of the Western Conference. I mean, if they win their games, and I think if San Diego keep on playing the way that they did against Atlanta, if we see a similar San Diego team to that team, they may drop more points. And I think they have a fairly easy schedule remaining compared to the Whitecaps, who have 1 game in hand. And LAFC are 6 points behind the Whitecaps, but still, I think the Whitecaps. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit more later. But yeah, LAFC with Son and Bouanga up top, can you really stop them? Like Bouanga, obviously, hat trick against San Jose. Son scored. RSL, Son hat trick, Bouanga scores. RSL again, Bouanga hat trick, and Son scores. And it's just, what can you do? I'm curious to see how they match up against a better backline, and I'm not sure when the next time we'll see that is, but it's not going to be the St. Louis team really, but we'll see what comes of it. Right now they look pretty unstoppable, and there isn't much more I can say. I think this LAFC team, especially as a lower seed in the playoffs, even if they finish 4th or 3rd, it's not a team you want to come up against, no matter if you're home or away. This is one of the last teams you're going to want to see in the playoffs. Yeah, I think LAFC should win this one pretty comfortably, and I think they'll continue to surge, especially with a relatively easy schedule coming up. Now, next up, we've got Colorado Rapids hosting Minnesota United. The Rapids can put themselves in a fairly good position in terms of playoff contention with a win in this game. They're playing at home against the Minnesota side who have had a pretty rough week, obviously getting eliminated from the US Open Cup semifinal in devastating fashion with the last-minute goal in extra time from CJ Fodry, and then losing 3-0 at home to Chicago, conceding off 2 set pieces as well, kind of Chicago stealing their whole thing. So that's going to be a rough one, and Minnesota are going to want to bounce back from that. But Colorado have looked pretty decent. Paxton Aronson has looked impressive since putting on the shirt for the first time, and the Rapids will need another good performance from him to beat this Minnesota side. Obviously, like I said, they struggled this past week, but they're still extremely good defensively and have an overall solid squad, The midfield is pretty good. You've got Joaquin Pereira, Robin Ludd. Wingbacks are fairly good, quite good as well, maybe the best in the league in terms of options they've got at wingback. The main concern, obviously, is the number 9. Tanya O'Shea went to Villarreal and scored in his first start, so fair play to him. Well done. As a Canadian, I'm extremely happy. But yeah, Tanya's gone, and Kelvin Yeboah is out for the rest of the season with an injury, so it kind of leaves him with 2 options, really, maybe 3. One of them is Mamadou Dieng, who is actually an out-and-out number 9, and he's played 1 game in MLS, I believe. So he was great in the USL Championship, but has pretty much no MLS experience. So other than that, you could go for a Bongi Longwane, who they have already tried at the number 9, and I think he gives you, he runs all the time, and he is quite fast. So, it's a decent option, but he doesn't give you the presence that a regular number 9 would, just in terms of size and hold-up play and that sort of thing, or you could go for a Robin Ludd even. Kind of play him as a false 9 and I guess work off of him and have Pereira and Bongi and whoever else feed off of him. We'll see how that goes. We'll see what they come up with. But Minnesota need to win this game because LAFC are extremely close to them. And I think even if they do win this game, LAFC, because of their games in hand, can pass them. But Minnesota really, really need to win here to push for home field advantage in the playoffs. And I mean, it's not guaranteed because of LAFC, because they're, you've got LAFC, you've got Seattle, who are kind of close and have a game in hand as well. But I mean, they're still in a pretty good position to get home field advantage unless they drop points pretty much every game they play from now on until the end of the regular season. And now we move on to RSL against Austin. Now, RSL are coming off a very weird week, which I already mentioned earlier. They played LAFC twice, lost 4-1 both times, an LAFC player scoring a hat-trick in each game, one Bouanga, one Sun, and then in each game the other guy scored one as well. And on top of that, RSL's goals in both games were absolute bangers. Xavier Gozo with a kind of scissor kick, kind of bicycle kick in the game in Utah. And then in LA, Brian Vera to make it 1-0 for RSL. Absolute rocket. Smashed it from outside the box. Moved so fast it looked like a glitch. But that doesn't matter because they lost 4-1 in both games. Just outplayed on every level against a team with superstars, which makes sense. So now they're in a position where they really, really need to win this game if they want to have a chance of making the playoffs as a 9 seed. It's gonna be tough for them to create much against an Austin team that's been so defensively sound all season. And they're gonna need, obviously, Diego Luna. He has been pretty good all season. They're gonna need him to step up again. They're gonna probably need their new striker Juan Cruz, who missed a penalty against LAFC in the first game. They're going to need him to step up and maybe finally get his first goal of the season. I think he's played 7 games now. Maybe I could be wrong, but I believe he has. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, they've got bright talent in Xavier Gozo. They've got a fairly solid team. Like, I like this RSL team, and I think they're better than a 10 seed. Maybe better than a 9 seed as well, but we'll see what happens with them. And Austin are coming off an absolute high, obviously, like I mentioned earlier with Minnesota, beating Minnesota in extra time of the US Open Cup semifinal, so they've made it to the final, which will be played in Nashville. And after that, just a few days later on Sunday Night Soccer, beating the Seattle Sounders 2-1 with a Mirto Zuni last-minute goal. So Austin are in a pretty good position right now, and there is a scenario in which they move up to 5th. They're 1 point behind Seattle right now, and Seattle have a pretty tough game this weekend, which I'll also talk about in a second. So they're 1 point behind Seattle in 5th, and there's a potential that if they move up to that 5th spot in Minnesota, which is looking likely they'll drop down to the 4th spot, there's a somewhat realistic chance that we get a US Open Cup semifinal rematch in the first round of the playoffs already. So we'll see how that goes. And now, moving on to our later games of Saturday. Our first one, I'm going to touch on very briefly because it's the LA Galaxy against Sporting Kansas City. So kind of similar to what I said about New England and Atlanta, I don't care about this game at all. I think the only thing that could be interesting is Dan Jovovich coming back to Dingley Hill Sports Park. I think Galaxy have said he's going to get his championship ring when he's there, which makes sense. And I think he probably scores. But that's pretty much all I have to say about that game. The less we talk about it, the better. So now let's move on to Portland against Dallas. A win here for Portland can almost certainly keep them away from the wildcard game, which is already an improvement on last season. And you haven't even gone into the playoffs yet. And, if Dallas win this game, very interesting position. Dallas would be 3 points behind the Timbers while having a game in hand on them. So it's an interesting game here, obviously. Portland at home, and they're coming off a draw at BC Place against the Whitecaps, in which, at least in the first half of that game, Portland, they look like the team that's pushing for Supporter Shield, I'll say that much. Obviously a very kind of makeshift Whitecaps backline. Giuseppe Bovalina getting, I believe, his second start of the season. First one being an extremely rotated team in Minnesota after the first leg of the Champions Cup semifinal. Oh, regardless, Giuseppe Bovalina, Matias Laporta, Bilal Albouni, and Tate Johnson as the back four. Either way, the Timbers looked phenomenal against the Whitecaps in this game, at least in the first half. And I mean, realistically, I genuinely think, Phil Neville said it himself. He thinks they should have scored 4 in that first half. I think he's not that far off. The amount of times that Christopher Veld got into goal scoring positions, just dribbling past Giuseppe Bovalina with ease, he alone could have had 3. So, it's unfortunate for them that they only scored 1, and the one was an absolute banger from Kamal Miller of all people. I saw it right in front of my own eyes, and happy for Kamal, obviously as a Canadian, but it was tough to see that one. And then for Dallas, they're an interesting team right now, and I think the main thing that's working for them is the strike partnership of Petar Musa and Logan Farrington. I think it's working wonders for both sides. We saw, the combinations between them. The back heel assist from one to the other. I think it was Farrington to Musa who then scored. Might be the other way around. I could be wrong. But either way, this Dallas team is actually unbeaten in 6 games, which is very interesting. I think this game could be obviously, like I said, this game has massive implications on both of these teams, and one of them basically guarantees a playoff spot. Obviously not officially, but I think they could actually officially clinch a playoff spot. If certain results go their way, that's the Timbers, of course, and then Dallas pushing for a wild card spot or maybe even a 7 seed. We'll see. But this game's going to be a fun one. It could go either way. And then we've got San Diego hosting San Jose. Now, one team is firmly in the Shield race, and one team is in the race for a wild card spot and very much on the decline right now. Last time out for San Diego, they dropped crucial points at Atlanta, and quite frankly, I think they were lucky to come away with the 1 point because Atlanta, at least from what I saw during the game, looked like the better team. Jamal Tiare got through so many times. And it was a great performance from Atlanta. I mentioned it already earlier. And San Diego just looked out of ideas. Obviously, they scored and they had some chances, but it's not like the San Diego we're used to seeing. So, now they're 3 points behind the Union in the Shield race, and they need to win here to bounce back and stay in the Shield race. Anders Dreyer needs to step up yet again, especially if he still wants a shot at winning MVP, which I think might kind of be gone already, given how Lionel Messi has performed in the last few games. If he takes Miami to the Shield, he's obviously going to win MVP again. So we'll see how that goes for San Diego. And then for San Jose, I think they've had a pretty interesting season. You look at their team, and at the start of the season, they were one of the most exciting teams in MLS. They had I think the best attack in the league at a certain point, while also having the worst backline in the league. So it's, you would tune into a San Jose game and you'd know that you're going to get a high-scoring affair between two teams, pretty much no matter who they're playing against. We saw it against Miami. I think it was a 3-3 game in that game in San Jose. So I don't really know. And then, nowadays, it's the attack is severely dropped off and the back line is still awful. So, you put 2 and 2 together and what you get is a bad soccer team. So I'm intrigued to see how this one plays out because obviously the Quakes do still have a lot of talent going forward. And San Diego showed last week that they can be vulnerable fairly often, even against so-called bad teams. Because, Atlanta, I would say, had the better chances in that game and should have won the game. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I'm expecting a bounce back from San Diego, but crazier things have happened. So we'll see. Now, let's move on to a game that I'm going to be attending. I'm going to be boarding a bus to head to Seattle for this game tomorrow. It's the Seattle Sounders hosting my beloved Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, the Sounders are obviously coming off of the loss to Austin. They also had the loss to Miami recently, the 3-1 in the League Cup final rematch. But regardless, still an extremely good team. And overall been maybe the best team in not best team, but one of the best teams in MLS since the Club World Cup, essentially. They've been great. They've been fantastic to watch. I think, you know, Danny Musovski's been really good for a period of time. Osaze de Rosario, very good. He's got quite a funny story from getting suspended in the Canadian Premier League for smoking weed to then scoring in a League Cup final and scoring in MLS and whatnot. It's a fascinating story, and obviously his father is a very, very important figure in North American soccer. Um, and I think Seattle, I mean, they're just an extremely solid team. You've got the Roldans who are very good. You've got maybe the best back line in the league overall, at least in terms of healthy players, that is, because I would argue we don't need to get into that because the Whitecaps don't have a healthy back line. Doesn't really matter at the moment. So yeah, the Sounders looking great. Obviously, not in terms of their last few games, but overall, over the course of the last few months, one of the best teams in MLS, and at Lumen Field, they're still extremely, extremely tough to beat. And I mean, they haven't lost at Lumen Field in a while. So we'll see how that one goes. And then for the Whitecaps, I mean, if you look at the first half of that Portland game on Wednesday, terrible showing, obviously missing a lot of guys, We've got all the injuries in the back line, as well as Andres Cubas and Eddie Ocampo, who were both suspended because of yellow card accumulation. But regardless, just a really, really bad performance in that first half against Portland. And they did certainly bounce back in the second half, and I think a major part of that was bringing on Ali Ahmed, who provides something different than Jaden Nelson and Emmanuel Sabi. They're kind of more of goal threats. They can take on a defender and head to goal, whereas Ali Ahmed is much more of a chance creator. And you needed someone like that because you can't just have Sebastian Berhalter whipping in balls all the time. He's very good at it, obviously. He's one of the best passers in the league, crossers, everything. Maybe the best set piece, one of the best set piece takers in the league. We saw it with the U.S. men's national team. We saw it with the goal that the Whitecaps scored in that game. Yeah, Ali Ahmed just provided something different in terms of chance creation, and the Whitecaps in the second half looked like the team they're supposed to be. They looked like a dangerous team. They should have scored more than one, I believe. I mean, obviously, after the goal, you had two big chances. Brian White hit one just wide, and then Emmanuel Sabi hit the bar. And I think, in a way, both teams were almost lucky to come out with a point. On the one side, Portland had a fantastic first half and just couldn't put their chances away. And then on the other side, the Whitecaps were the better team in the second half. And it's really just a game of two halves. That's all it is. But this game's going to be an interesting one for the Whitecaps heading down to Seattle. I think just this Whitecaps team, obviously it's going to be a bit better in terms of just the overall squad. Thomas Muller is back in the squad. I don't know if he's going to start or come off the bench, but regardless, he's going to be there, and it's going to be a big boost for the team. Cubas is back, Ocampo is back, which means you can have kind of a better back line, at least fullback-wise. You've got Ocampo and Tate Johnson rather than having to play Giuseppe Bovalina, and Cubas slots back into the midfield, one of the best sixes in the league. And the big question for the Whitecaps still right now is the center back position, because now there is a chance that Bilal Booney won't play either. He is questionable for this game after obtaining a hip injury in the Portland game. He played through it, but it didn't look great for a while. And I guess we'll see who plays alongside Matias Laborda, because right now the only other center back available in the squad is Mark O'Neill, who may have, I'm not sure if he's played in an MLS game yet or not, but he played for Whitecaps FC 2 for most of the season, and he's been good with them, but to toss him in for his first ever start in MLS at Lumen Field in Seattle in a big game, if you want to stay alive in the Supporter Shield race, it's going to be probably not going to be great. Now, am I confident the Whitecaps can create a lot of goal scoring chances? Yes. Do I think the Whitecaps can keep a clean sheet in this game? Yes, but I find it extremely unlikely, and I think this is going to be a very, very interesting game, and we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. And then now I'm gonna move on to our final game of the weekend, which is the Sunday night soccer matchup, and it's a very, very big game. FC Cincinnati hosting Orlando City. Both teams in races of their own. Cincinnati still alive in the Shield race. In Orlando, trying to secure home field advantage, pretty much like just like half the teams in the Eastern Conference. And I think the big storyline here is the battle of the number 10s. It's Evander against Martin Ojeda. Cincinnati have not played super convincingly lately, or I mean, as a whole, a lot of this season, a lot of their games have been kind of hard fought battles rather than just playing good soccer and beating the other team. And they were outplayed at times against a 10-man Galaxy side last week, but they have match winners. They have Evander, they have Brenner, they have Kevin Denke, they have all these guys in the attack who they produce match-winning moments. And that's exactly what they did in Carson last weekend. And then Orlando, on the other hand, are coming off of a huge late win against Nashville with the goal from Duncan McGuire, and they're looking to continue the momentum going into this game, potentially moving into a top 4 spot while having a game in hand on the other teams. Although that game in hand is against the Whitecaps in the international break, so it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. We'll see who's healthy for the Whitecaps, and I mean, that can be a massive, massive game for the Supporter Shield race, especially for the Whitecaps, but also for Orlando for the top 4 race, because I think they're fairly clearly out of the Supporter Shield race unless some sort of miracle happens and everyone above them loses. But realistically, they're out of that one, but they're still very much in the race for top 4 in the Eastern Conference. And this game is going to be extremely fascinating. I think both of these teams have so much quality in the attack and in the back line and pretty much just all over. They've got, I mean, Roman Celentano, I believe, isn't going to play for Cincinnati, which is tough for them, but the back line from Cincinnati is a very good back line, even though they conceded 2 goals at the LA Galaxy. Orlando have an extremely good back line with, a leader like Robin Janssen and just all sorts of other pieces. Both teams have dynamic attacks that can win you games with big moments. And both teams have a good midfield. I think it's going to be a really good battle between 2 really good teams. And I genuinely can't predict this one. I think both teams have a good case for winning this game. I could very, very easily see a draw happen as well. I guess we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And that's it for my preview of this weekend. Now, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And I'll see you next time.